Ethan, 34 years old this year. When Ethan tries to trace the trajectory of the past 5 years, what emerges in his mind is not a clear memory, but a scorched wasteland, littered with the remnants of everything Ethan once cherished: family, dignity, future, and a beautiful starting point Ethan can never return to. Ethan once believed he held a hand of divinely dealt cards, a starting position that many spend their entire lives chasing and dreaming of. Rewind to 2019, when Ethan was 29, and he walked down the aisle with Olivia, the love of his life. Ethan's parents, a frugal working-class couple, pooled their life savings to make a substantial down payment on a house with a white picket fence and a backyard lawn in sunny suburban California. They had no crushing mortgage burden, and their bank account still held a secure $300,000, originally set aside for their retirement, but gifted to jumpstart Ethan and Olivia's new life. Olivia was so wonderful, her eyes sparkling with boundless dreams for the future. Just 2 months after their wedding, she was pregnant, a piece of news like an angel's trumpet, casting a holy glow over their already blissful life. She quit her job as a sales associate at a boutique clothing store downtown, embracing the role of a stay-at-home wife, her world revolving around Ethan and their soon-to-be-born child. She studied healthy recipes, made their home warm and cozy, and on weekend afternoons, they'd stroll through baby stores, carefully picking out everything for their little one. Those days, the air was filled with the sweet scent of lemon and sunlight, and Ethan was convinced this was eternity, the happiness he deserved. Yet Ethan, with his own hands, tore this perfect canvas to shreds and set it ablaze. Everyone has harmless hobbies, like lemon slices in a glass of plain water, adding a touch of flavor. Ethan's hobby was watching esports matches. On restless nights, the skillful plays and intense team battles on the screen always ignited a fire of passion deep within him. The seed of disaster was quietly planted during one late-night stream. A cleverly designed pop-up ad flashed during a break, its dazzling visuals and enticing words promising a new form of entertainment, a chance to turn passion into profit. Driven by adrenaline, Ethan, almost as if possessed, clicked through and downloaded a flashy online gambling platform. At first, his intentions were laughably innocent, just a few bucks to support his favorite team, to feel personally invested in their victories. Whether it was the platform's honeyed trap for newbies or Ethan's uncanny luck that night, within half a month, he'd won over $2,000. The platform's withdrawal system was seamless. Funds hit his account almost instantly. This frictionless experience dismantled all of Ethan's caution, and he began to see it as an entertainment vault, a secret treasure trove of his own discovery. Gambling, once a pastime, gradually became a habit. Whenever he had a spare moment, during lunch breaks or while waiting for Olivia to cook, Ethan would reflexively open the app. His bets crept up from tentative tens to hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Once the floodgates of greed are opened, the deluge of desire pours through unchecked. Soon, the platform's homepage bombarded Ethan with dazzling new games. Online slot machines, their spinning symbols and jarring sound effects hitting his brain like a drug. Virtual horse racing, with rolling odds and sprinting animations that sent his pulse racing. And fast keno lotteries, where wins or losses unfolded in mere seconds. These games were far faster than esports, their thrills more raw and immediate. The rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins hooked him completely. Ethan began chasing bigger highs, which led to faster defeats. Before long, he'd not only lost all his winnings but started eating into that sacred $300,000 nest egg, the symbol of their future. The process was so swift it left no time for reflection, like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. The dwindling funds showed as cold digits on bank statements, but in Ethan's mind, every bet was a chance to turn things around, every loss just a stepping stone to the next win. By the end of 2019, with Olivia 8 months pregnant, that once secure deposit had been whittled down to a few $100s. Ethan vividly recalls that afternoon, bright sunlight, Olivia smiling as she reminded him about the next day's prenatal checkup. Panic gripped his heart, but he calmly said, "Okay, honey," then quietly paid the bill with his credit card. If only the shame of that moment had woken him up, if only he'd come to his senses, there might still have been time. But deep in Ethan's bones lay a pathological stubbornness, a damned arrogance that refused to bow to failure. Each month, as soon as his paycheck hit, Ethan couldn't wait to pour it all into that devouring platform. His betting strategy turned simple and reckless, reeking of a gambler's endgame desperation. $1,500 on the first bet, double to $3,000 if he lost, then stake everything left. The fastest time, Ethan watched a month's hard-earned salary vanish in under 3 minutes. In 2020, the pandemic swept the world like an invisible beast, and their son, Noah, was born that spring. A new life should have been the sunlight to dispel all shadows, but in Ethan's warped, suppressed state, Noah's cries became an unbearable weight. In reality, Ethan's visible debt was only $20,000 to $30,000 in credit card balances, with minimum payments of a few hundred a month. If he'd stopped, his salary could have kept their life comfortable. But Ethan wasn't satisfied. He couldn't accept that the $300,000 was gone, couldn't admit his stupidity and failure. He even began to harbor an absurd notion, blaming all his stress on their innocent newborn. This vile thought became the perfect excuse to break his final moral barrier. Ethan had sworn never to touch online loans, knowing they were a one-way ticket to hell. But under that excuse, he easily convinced himself. He calculated frantically. If he could borrow enough to win back a few tens of thousands, pay off the credit cards, he'd stop, delete all gambling apps, and be a responsible husband and father. Clinging to this hollow fantasy, Ethan dove into larger-scale gambling. He gambled nonstop for over a month. Fate played a cruel trick, dangling hope before plunging him deeper into the abyss. He won back $80,000. That money sat quietly in his account, making him feel like he owned the world. But just as he thought he could regain control, the pandemic exploded, his company went fully remote, and Ethan was trapped at home. His mindset collapsed completely. Anyone who's raised a newborn knows how their cries test an adult's nerves. Ethan loved Noah, no question. Deep down, he'd give anything for him. But under gambling's curse, that love twisted. Ethan morbidly hoped that when Noah cried, he'd be basking in a win. He set an absurd daily plan, win $1,500 and stop. If he hit that goal, no matter how much Noah wailed, Ethan could be endlessly patient, cradling him, humming off-key lullabies, feeling like a superhero dad. But if he lost, Noah's piercing cries were like a drill through his eardrums, igniting all his frustration, anger, and despair. That rush would strip away all reason, driving him to click wildly on the screen, betting thousands or even tens of thousands in one go, chasing a fleeting comeback or faster ruin. Those 5 months of remote work became Ethan's accelerator to ruin. He borrowed from every online lender he could find, from reputable to obscure. Each approval notification was like a hit of a drug, brief euphoria followed by deeper anxiety. His total debt ballooned to an unbelievable $45,000. To keep gambling, to scrape together more funds, Ethan turned his sinful gaze to the person who trusted him most, who had no defenses against him, Olivia. He crafted a meticulous lie, one that sounded utterly convincing. He told her he'd found a high-return investment opportunity through a friend online, one that many colleagues had profited from. He explained that his own salary was tied up in a fixed-term savings account, and early withdrawal would mean huge losses. Holding her hand, looking into her eyes, he swore with utmost sincerity that this was a sure bet, a way to elevate their life and secure Noah's education. Naive Olivia, who knew nothing of finance and trusted Ethan completely, believed him. Under his coaxing and urging, she took out $20,000 in loans using her identity. When Ethan got that money, he felt no guilt, only the fevered thrill of a gambler returning to the table. Unsurprisingly, within a month, that money, carrying all her trust, evaporated in the virtual gambling world. Ethan wouldn't confess to his parents. Admitting the truth meant owning up to his incompetence, deceit, and utter downfall, shattering their pride in front of friends and family. But with debts snowballing and collection calls and emails bombarding his phone, he had no choice. When he finally mustered the courage to drive to his parents' house one weekend afternoon and confess everything, he saw their world collapse. His mother's eyes went from shock to disbelief, then silent tears. His father, always stoic, sat silently on the couch, smoking one cigarette after another, his face's wrinkles deepening in the haze, aging a decade in moments. They didn't berate him much. Their disappointed silence cut deeper than any scolding. In the end, they said nothing, just quietly went to their bedroom and brought out their savings book, $70,000, their entire pension, their last safety net for old age. After clearing all debts, Ethan had just over $30,000 left. He knelt before them, swearing he'd turn his life around. In that moment, he thought the nightmare might finally end. But gambling, once it plants its devilish seed in your heart, clings like a parasite, never fully eradicated. In 2021, with the pandemic's shadow lingering and Ethan's work sporadic, the remaining $30,000 dwindled quickly between daily expenses and occasional itches. Life grew tight again, and the anxiety of being controlled by money engulfed him like a tide. So, in a haze of self-deception, just when a bit for living expenses and stop, Ethan reopened the platform he'd sworn never to touch. He fell back into the hopeless cycle of winning, losing, borrowing, and losing again. Each loop deepened his debt and guilt. By 2022, when his company fully resumed in-person work, his new debt had climbed to $65,000. Stable income didn't help. His salary was laughably small against towering interest and installment payments. Each month, he scraped together $700 from his meager paycheck for Olivia as household expenses. How could he pay off the growing debts? So he wove more lies to maintain their crumbling facade, once again turning to Olivia. In the second half of 2022, Through manipulation and emotional coercion, Olivia took on $50,000 in debt for him, $30,000 from every online loan she could get, and $20,000 begged from relatives and friends, each call eroding her own credibility and dignity. Combined with Ethan's debts, their total liability reached a staggering $115,000, a figure that could crush any ordinary family. This time, he couldn't hide it. Their only way out was to sell their once joyful home, the house his parents had poured everything into. One night, when Ethan finally confessed everything to Olivia, he saw the last spark in her eyes die, a bone-deep collapse and despair. She didn't cry or scream, just sat there, as if her soul had been hollowed out. But what choice did they have? Who wants to destroy their own home? Yet without selling, overdue bills, ruthless lawsuits from lenders, and relentless collection calls would drown them, leaving no peace. The house sold hastily for $150,000. After a flurry of bank transfers to clear all debts, they were left with just a few tens of thousands in cash. They rented a much smaller apartment. Olivia spent most of her time caring for Noah, occasionally leaving him with Ethan's parents to take on part-time jobs. She kept encouraging Ethan, clinging to a stubborn optimism, saying they could buy another house if they worked together, that everything would be okay. But Ethan knew better. It was just her kind self-soothing. With his salary, even if he starved and saved $1,200 a month, it'd take a decade to match their original down payment. And they had to live, eat, pay rent, raise a child. Ethan couldn't fathom her optimism, and he couldn't muster any himself. The crushing powerlessness and despair weighed on his heart like a boulder. In early 2024, Olivia proposed another hopeful plan: pool money from both families for a minimal down payment on a small apartment, to give them a stable home and end their nomadic renting life. She didn't know Ethan's parents were tapped out, drained dry by him. She thought they had the means but chose to stand by, assumed they were heartless, hoarding hundreds of thousands in pensions. So she began, intentionally or not, to complain about them to Ethan. Ethan, a filial son, held his parents' sacrifices as an untouchable line. He wouldn't let anyone, not even his wife, disparage them. That day, they had their fiercest fight ever. Years of pent-up frustration, regret, pressure, and impotent rage ignited by her words. Her sharp accusations stabbed at his most sensitive nerves. Ethan lost all reason, his mind blank with burning anger. He raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. The world froze. The blow landed squarely on her eye. The hospital later diagnosed a detached retina. The surgery and treatment cost nearly $7,500. After that, everything between them ended. Olivia took Noah and returned to her parents' home. Ethan called and texted countless times, apologizing in every way he could, begging for forgiveness, but the wound he'd carved in her heart was too deep to heal. Her father, an upright and kind man, called Ethan, berating his parents, cursing them for raising a son worse than an animal. After Olivia left, Ethan lived alone in that cold, empty apartment, gnawed by endless regret and piercing loneliness. The thought of that $7,500 medical bill, a raw, bloody debt caused by his violence, stabbed his heart like needles. So, in that familiar, suffocating despair, like an addict seeking a fix, Ethan turned to gambling again. This time, he went completely mad. Like a tireless machine, he borrowed from every lender still offering credit, maxed out every credit card, even shamelessly called every relative, friend, and former colleague who might lend him money. From then until April this year, his debt snowballed to $60,000. Clinging to a final delusion, he called Olivia, asking her to borrow another $30,000 to ease the pressure. A long silence followed, then her calm, resolute voice. "Ethan, we're done." She wouldn't help anymore. She just wanted a divorce. Ethan made a last desperate plea, using Noah, begging for one final chance for their broken family. Her response shattered his illusions. She calmly said she'd give up custody, because she knew Noah had no future with an irredeemable gambler and abuser. In May, they divorced. The debt explosion sent Ethan's life into chaos. His boss had a stern talk with him. Though not fired, Ethan felt the disdain and distance in his colleagues' eyes. He called relatives and friends about their debts, groveling for leniency. Most, out of old ties, agreed to give him 2 years to repay. But a few valued money over bonds, their relentless calls and texts like death knells, laced with venomous insults. The professional collection agencies already had him on edge, but these friends delivered the final blow. To escape, Ethan threw himself back at the gambling table, fantasizing about a big win to silence everyone and prove he wasn't a failure. But the result was always the same cruel reversal. The more he wanted to win, the faster and harder he lost. From May to now, for months, he hasn't paid a cent of debt. Every paycheck instantly becomes meaningless digits on a gambling site. Ethan doesn't know what hope is left in this life. He slogs through a month at the office, enduring his boss's nitpicking and colleagues' sneers, for a few $1,000s. That money, if spent on a shopping spree, would take hours to burn through. But in the virtual, soul-eating world of online gambling, it vanishes in under 5 minutes. A few clicks, a few bets on virtual basketball or spins on a slot machine, and it's gone. Ethan feels no thrill, just endless emptiness and bone-deep self-hatred. This year, Ethan is 34. Christmas is a few months away. He can't imagine, in a season meant for family and warmth, being alone in this cramped rental, nibbling cold bread and instant noodles, hearing others' laughter outside. Ethan really must quit gambling. Last night, Ethan mustered his last shred of courage and called his parents, the call he dreaded most. Using a lame lie about rent, he squeezed the last $400 from their account. They didn't ask questions, just wearily told him to take care of himself. Within 10 minutes, that money vanished in the final whistle of a virtual soccer match. As his balance hit zero, Ethan felt a gut-wrenching wave of nausea and futility. Everything felt meaningless. He hated the self that dragged him into this abyss time and again. Staring at the haggard, unfamiliar, failure-ridden face in the mirror, Ethan swore, word by word, that starting today, this second, he would quit gambling. He knows it's his only shot at life. Only by quitting can he cling to that faint, unspeakable hope that one day, maybe, Olivia will believe he's truly changed and return with Noah to his side.